Joseph Capelli, our hero, the last sentinel, lives in Haven, Oklahoma with his family, and their primary strategy for surviving the occupation of the Chimera is to hide, to stay hidden, to avoid contact. And unfortunately, during the course of this level, you'll see that you've been found out. A Chimeran terraformer, which is this massive beam from the sky, is descending upon the town. So the winds are whipping. It's so massive it creates its own weather patterns. And you will see a lot of wind and experience the whipping nature of that as the terraformer descends.
In one of these sections in the Haven Town defense, you're in a junkyard and a new character is introed, which is the Longlegs. They have the ability to jump real high and jump all over the place. And one of the big feelings we wanted to create just in this environment, not only with these characters, but with the standard hybrids, is just the sense of just having to survive. We try to build these spaces a little different than R2 and give them lots of options. You know, you can go up high to the top of a building, you can fight from the ground, and you're just fighting these guys off and trying to hold them back so the rest of town can escape.
Beginning of the game, this is really the Wizard of Oz setup. This is the hurricane happening.
They're just chasing you back to the center of town. You're fighting them off, and they're bringing in more drop ships, and it's just like the whole Chimeran force is just coming down on the player right then and there.
You have a certain gaming paradigm involved when you're fighting those hybrids. You're looking for cover. You're trying to move from cover to cover to shoot these things that are trying to pin you down. This is the complete opposite of having to deal with the whole world. Well, oftentimes it starts off with the designer coming up to me and telling me what their needs are. For this particular design, it was Cameron. So he would come to me and tell me what the gameplay is going to be like, the particular powers of it, and then I have to make that fit within the matrix of Chimeran lore and Chimeran design. So I did the initial drawings, and I did a bunch of different heads. Some way more alien, much more original, much stranger. But the stranger ones weren't working because it didn't feel like part of the Chimeran ecology. So I had to dial it back to what we had essentially, which is a giant Chimeran gorilla.
In this case, his particular heat stacks were actually located on his chest and on his shoulders, and so that's why, you know, when he overheat, he rips it off, showcasing like the damages that was done underneath. And it's one of those characters that he changes state from, like, you know, goes on all fours, climbing on things and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Not only did we want him smashing through the environment, a lot of his attacks are like fire-based airfield attacks. So he has an airfield grenade that he can launch out. He can run and stand on top of buildings and fire a barrage of airfield grenades out. If you get close to him, he'll do a double fist, like smash into the ground and create a big area of effect fire blast. If the player gets close to the Hulk too, and like gets punched by the Hulk, you can get knocked into the walls, into cars, and all kinds of stuff. So we really want to make this guy up-in-your-face visceral, more than a lot of the other characters that fight at range.
This fight in Haven is from sort of the opening level of the game, and it really sets the tone for you in this world. That is, it's dangerous, you're vastly outnumbered, and there's never really an opportunity to feel safe.
way we do combat a little bit compared to R2 or maybe R1. Do you guys want to talk about that as a group and kind of our combat philosophies as we develop Resistance 3?
I think, yeah, let me say, I just want to say, I think it's really about bringing player choice back to the game more than we had in maybe Resistance 2. I think Resistance 1 had a little bit more open spaces, and Resistance 1 obviously had the weapon wheel where you were able to pick your weapon at any time, and we really wanted to emphasize those points. And Cameron did a great job of that junkyard, that first space, and you want to kind of talk about how you done it.
So with that, I mean, it's more an evolution of the combat. We had a couple other designers do like evaluations of our previous combat and see what we could do to improve it. And like taking those ideas of like open spaces and things like that, you approach level design as trying to give options for players, for the sniper type player, for the player who wants to run and gun. And so you start designing spaces that just allow that flow to happen naturally, And we're tuning combat now a lot to kind of try to direct the player, even though we have those big open spaces. We want the players still feel like, he has a sense of direction and a sense of purpose. So allowing these to be open, we still have like player direction. And I think it's helped a lot in this game.
So the last question I have before I turn it over to all these guys for their questions. So when you're building bosses and mini bosses, can you guys talk to me about like what makes them compelling? What makes them interesting to you guys as designers? How do you want them to interact with the players? And talk through that process a little bit. And we saw the brawler here, so maybe got some good examples.
Sure. So with the brawler, in R2 we had the Titan rank, this really big guy, had a long-range cannon. We liked that style of guy, but we wanted to bring him kind of more up in your face. And so, we made him a melee guy, but one of the tricks, or one of the difficulties with melee guys is in a first-person shooter, it's kind of hard to have a guy up in your face. So one of the things to make the brawler compelling to still be up in your face is give him a chance to rush you and get in your face, but also give him pauses so the player can step back and be able to fight the Hulk, still get that viscerality. I think one of the things is allowing to have the player some choice with how he fights the Hulk as well. I mean, that's one of our overarching themes. And so a multitude of weapons are good at fighting the Hulk, and they all have their own strategies. I think, what else?
Just admit it, the Magnum is the best.
The Magnum is the best, but who doesn't love the Magnum? The Magnum owns, right?
Before I open up, Lisa's going to be back up here later when we show a level she worked on and also to talk about story and design, but she is you're not really new anymore, but one of the younger designers of Insomniac, I guess. And I did want to ask.
An intern on Resistance 2.
She was an intern on Resistance 2, and she came back. She's been with us on Resistance 3. I was curious, though, and this is a good discussion for it. What's the biggest thing you've learned about design since you've been in Insomniac Games?
The biggest thing I've learned about design, oh man.
That's a hard question. I'm sorry for
Iteration.
putting it
Well,
on.
I don't know. It's strange because I've always known iteration has been important to design, but seeing it in practice, looking at even this level now compared to when it was first prototyped and how often things change and how many things change, getting people to play it, find out what's fun, what's not fun. Just seeing that in action is really exciting because so many things go through so many states, and you'll get to a point and be like, this isn't working, and throw it out and do something different, and you're like, oh no, it's terrifying, but it's really not because it yields the best results. But just looking at how many iterations of change have been in all of the levels across time has been probably the most exciting thing to see.
Cool. So I want to open it up for about 15 minutes of fan questions, and I'd love to get you on this hand mic so everyone can hear you. So I'm going to stand up actually and walk around to anyone that has a question and pass this to you. So if you want to raise your hands, I guess I can just pass you the mic. And if you got a question for any of these folks about gameplay, design, Resistance 3, whatever, now is the time. So
how many of the old enemies from Resistance 1 are going to be in Resistance 3, like the Widowmaker, the Menials, and such?
I would say, I'm gonna try to guess off the top. I'm gonna say probably 8 or 9 of the old enemies and a decent crop of new ones. And all the enemies have gone through pretty significant tweaks. We've totally changed how the AI works and how the designers are scripting them. They're a lot more. In Resistance 2, they're a little bit more like we would tell them where to go and what to do. We give them what we have a job system now where we give them behavior like being aggressive or being defensive or being flanking, and they just kind of do what they want to do, and it ends up creating a lot more diversity. Like if you play the same area twice, it won't be exactly the same.
I'm curious, how are weapon upgrades going to work in multiplayer?
So weapon upgrades in multiplayer you will earn through completing levels. When you complete levels, you'll get currency which you can spend and then unlock weapon upgrades.
In the Egyptian theater, can you compare Resistance 3 to any type of movie? What's the most comparable movie to this game?
Can you combo with movies?
It can be combat. We're talking about it. I think the road you brought up.
Road plus.
The road with a lot more action.
I think
Michael Bay's The Road.
I know some people. I've heard the road plus District 9.
That's
Yeah, District 9, crazy weapons and all that sort of stuff.
My second question is that what other games, other than community feedback, did influence you guys' level like improvements? What influenced you guys besides the other games, the Resistance games?
That's a good question. It's actually hard to say. I don't know that we went and looked at a bunch of other games and said, this is something we want to mimic. I think as far as like giving player choice, I think Halo does an outstanding job with that. They have pretty open sort of arena type spaces. I think they're a very different game than us. I don't know that we went to them and were like, there's a lot of one-to-one lessons we can learn there, but I think that sort of the spirit of that, having a lot of freedom. And then, I don't know, my favorite game of all time is Half-Life 2, so I'm sure I'm influenced by that in ways that I don't even realize.
One of the things Resistance 2 seemed to have that I noticed is it had a large focus on water. Is there any kind of focus in Resistance 3 that you'll be noticing as you go through the story?
Well, there's a whole level that takes place in a flooded town, basically, when you're on the boat. I'm sure you've seen footage of it. But I'd say that focusing on the interactivity is not like the same level as R2. It doesn't show up as, I'm trying to count how many times water shows up.
I don't think there's anything like water that's, I don't know, that's like the one thing. I think we've got a certain number of levels, and I think giving each level and each sort of group that you meet along the way a specific identity, and sort of showing you how different places sort of have ended up after the Chimeran One, and how different groups of people have survived. Under that, each group has dealt with that in a very different way, and I think showing that sort of the human survival aspect was our focus.
More focused on people and the sun.
Less on water.
I'd say like there's certain tech that's not like something specific, like water. Like all our environment stuff, though, you saw the wind blowing around. Some of that stuff is used in very different ways in later levels to show different weather and environments. And so we do a lot of different things. And so that system, we can't say, oh, it's water. It's just we put in a lot of work that would let us do different things in each level.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah, we had a fair amount of weather in Resistance 1 and sort of dropped that down in Resistance 2. It's way high in Resistance 3. This is again part of each place being very different and having its own identity.
Sharpshooter and the 3D in Resistance 3 when it comes out in September 6th. So you guys I don't know how you work to do this stuff. Right. So that's a great announcement. Hope you guys are excited about that, and I know a lot of you have been playing Killzone and SOCOM with the move, so we're excited to be able to support that for R3. We're going to run a behind-the-scenes video first that we put together on the